Thoth reincarnated on a divine plane as Hermes, going through an incredible transition that was both unique and daunting. This is a part of that story from his perspective, and thus I give you Thoth.
In this time, a new challenge emerged. Gods were necessary only because the human consciousness that was close to creature form was not capable of recognizing the unity of God without a figure who played the role of God for them. The gift of these figures, who were usually guardians of these gardens, was that we were indeed in divine relationship with each other. Thus, humans thought of us in conflict. We did not. We played out human conflicts as often as we could in non-destructive forms. I say this with hesitation, for in most regards, we had to destroy forces as we went along. It was very difficult to teach humans to have faith in us because we were consistently destroying what we invited you to be. In this, we were not teaching you to create single, consistent ways. We were teaching you to create and let go, and then create anew and let go again. This is the era during which many forms of tradition took shape that lasted for longer periods of time. It was no longer necessary for me to inhabit a central king-like presence. And yet, the resonance of dominance was not effective enough to release itself in a way that could enable consistent changes. This was true specifically because humans needed to learn to transcend the worship of specific figures in order to reclaim universal presence. And thus, traditions emerged that annihilated this phase also. And again, I died. On this occurrence, the time frames are not easy for you to register. Many of them are overlaid because the possibilities themselves were woven in different ways. What you may regard as crucial to understand is that oneness itself was taught to you through the presence of the idea of God. I relate with God. I do not embrace God as gendered. This is crucial for you to know because we did not change the gender of masculine power when we initiated monotheism. The reasons for this are many and one. It was preferable to give you a point of focus through which to understand oneness through the masculine, because the masculine has a closer ability to intentionally generate shifts in focus. I invite you to be technical about how you understand this, because you can understand this. I give you the end to this conversation now, before it is complete. Begin to worship God in the feminine. By putting the feminine divine presence first, you will reconcile the imbalance that exists with the monotheistic inheritance you are given. Essentially, give your divine respect to the earth herself. She is receptive in a form that is closer to feminine than any that you could understand. She receives the light of the sun, and thus the primary way in which you can relate to her is through this receptivity. It is, however, a very poor analogy for what we invite you to be. Essentially, do not over-personify the earth. She is vastly different in scale from anything you can exist in direct relationship to. And thus, I incarnated as Mercury. In this form, I became a messenger. I spread out my presence and completely left spaces that I created. I seeded possibilities and moved on. And in this, I reconciled the work I had done to generate monotheistic presence as Enoch. The Christian story itself was born out of the Hebrew tradition. The Muslim story itself was born out of the Hebrew tradition. The Hebrew tradition had generated a monotheistic conception before the rest of the world was ready for it, because they were incubating this conception and the ability to reject all other forms of divine worship. It is in this rejection that it was necessary to forget the past, to say no to all other forms of divine spiritual presence was essential, because people were too closely wrapped up in their loyalty to divergent vibrational presence. I tell you once again, you can understand this. It is within your capacity to do. The spiritual physics of this process are present, and you are invited to transcend the limitations that have prevented you from appreciating the true nature of this story. And as you transcend these limitations, you come still further when I tell you, my books were cut.
This was purposeful. Please appreciate, I am in several ways telling you this out of historical sequence. Recognize, we wrote this story before it occurred within your time. Thus, to grasp the magnitude of the way its interplay reconciles, you must embrace the awareness that we were seeding and changing and shifting the purpose and the focus and the timing of many events before they occurred. By removing some stories from the Bible that held monotheistic tradition together. We seeded the time when they would be remembered. The recurrence of these themes allows humanity to recognize the ways in which many spiritual traditions were born out of the tapestry we wove for you to begin with. As Enoch, I returned into the mystery. This allows you to become present with my path as it truly has been. To realize the connection between the many faiths is to know that I returned to the world without emphasis on my presence. As Mercury, I carried out the tasks that had been put into motion. I taught the shift from presence in the physical world into spirit itself. The church, the Lord, became the Lord of all lords. The politics continued. Murder and bloodshed continued. And yet now there was a linchpin that held it together. And in this, the devastating sequence of humanity was still incapable of embodying the true gifts of love that we initially began our story to generate. These gifts could not occur yet. And thus, by removing key elements of the story, we put you in a position both to remember and to transcend what you have been given. You are now invited to transcend what you have been given. Engage the stories of the past with a recognition that they were chosen. Relate with the presence of the divine as beyond gender. Relate with your age as a temporary presence you hold. Relate with your spirit as beyond this body and beyond this time. For you have incarnated not only within this lifetime, but within time itself. And that part of you which knows this to be true exists and yearns to reconnect with you. The key rests in the recognition that the divine presence of Gaia herself is a more appropriate hold for your awareness of the divine. She is holding you. She is one part of God, and yet she is a far more appropriate focus of your reverence, because she has held so many ways that have taught you to relate to God. As you shift into a divine relationship with both the earth herself and the story she has given you, you will learn to see how you can participate. This invitation is crucial to recognize that you are needed, is to embrace that this presence is also a part of you. For the gift of the change that is available to you now is to know that we have been here all along. We have never left you. We have taught you to relate with us in many ways that put you in a better position to know yourself as a part of the divine. The Christ is in you. The crystalline energy was born in direct relationship with the heart of the earth, and it invites you to allow the flow through you into the world.